My name is Magline Molife. It's a name that I was given by my uncle who was in the Arab countries. So when I was born, he told my parents to call me Magline. But I suppose it's a shortcut of Magdalene. It's Mary Magdalene. In Zimbabwe, well, it was Rhodesia then. Sorry if I continue saying Rhodesia. I was brought up in Rhodesia. When I grew up on my parents' farm, and life was okay. And it was only when you get into town that you realize that life is a bit different because of the whites. When you go into town wanting to buy something, there was a door for blacks, but the whites would go through the wider doors and sometimes would stand at a window to order whatever we want to buy. I've got four brothers and four sisters. So altogether, the children, we were 9, and including mother and father, we were 11. It was lovely because we all got on very well, and yes, we looked after each other. Yes. But I was at an advantage because the elder ones would look after us, only washing up, which I hated. Right, I'm the 7th, yes, of the 7th son. Yes, my parents were born in Rhodesia, but my grandfathers came from South Africa. My father's father, he came to Rhodesia with Rhodes, Cecil John Rhodes. Well, I cannot say they worked with him, for him, but what we gather from when we were little was that he had taken quite a lot of people to help out on his journey. He was a missionary. So he was teaching people scriptures and religion. And yes, I think he had these other people would help cooking and doing other things too. Yeah. But they were just a group with him. He went to South Africa and he was preaching there. Then they came to Rhodesia by the Great Blue Train, and that's when they met up with my grandfather. Well, to what we gathered at the time, yes, he was a good man. He was a religious man, and he was doing everything by the book. And he looked after the people who was in his group in Bulawayo. And he liked that area very much. And he had said that if he dies, his body will be laid in Matopos Hill. Yeah, it's a very quiet, lovely countryside. So anyway, they went to Salisbury, and that's when he started his work, missionary work. And there were other ministers from England and other areas of the world, but we only know about Cecil John Rhodes as I grew up. Yeah. My father, I understand he went into police at the age of 15. Yes. So was his brother, because there wasn't much for children at that time to do. So they were either going to join police force or to do some other things. Yeah, but because our grandfather was well known by the people whom they lived with, mostly the whites with the Methodist Church. So that's how my father and his brothers were helped to get into the police force. My mother is a daughter of a chief, a very wealthy chief. And yes, they met when she was, according to my father, when she was 13. At that time, I mean, girls were married very early in life. So she was married at 15. Yes, so while my parents were in Selukwe, working there, and it was near where my grandfather, the chief, lived. So they were in the area of my maternal parents. He worked in Selukwe, my father. So they were, as the years went by, he decided to buy a farm when they had about 5 of the children. So they bought a farm in Msengezi, Makwiro, which were purchased areas, in a purchased area. We were surrounded by white men's farms, yes. But at that time, they were allowed to. It was only later on that there was restriction. At the time I grew up, it's either you go into nursing or teaching. We didn't have enough professions to go by. And women, mostly as we grew up, I mean in school, we were taught a lot of domestic science because at that time, they focused that the girls' duty was to get married and look after the house and family. So they we were taught a lot of domestic science and also the other subjects in school. So they were not expected to go any further. Some would go up to standard 4, which was grade what? In today's grade 6 or something like that. Yes, yeah. And then others, because the parents had to pay school fees, it's not everybody was able to pay school fees for their children. But we were lucky in the fact that our parents were employed. So they paid for the schools. And my brothers, they went to high school in Koromonzi Secondary School. And then from there, after matric, which was higher than O levels, they went to ForFourth in university in South Africa, Cape Town. And that's where they went to university. Yes, and they graduated from there. And the only other job to do when you get back was to be either a teacher in a secondary school, because you were not allowed to go into engineering or any other jobs like that, yes. The jobs were very limited for blacks at the time. Well, for me, we worked hard on our parents' farm in order to earn money, after the crops, the yields, and then they would sell them and then get money enough for the boys, or my brothers as such, the 3 elder brothers, to go to college and university. And we did work a lot to help our parents. But then at the same time, they also did have helpers. We had a lot of people from Malawi, which was Nyasaland at the time. They would come and settle in our farms to help out with the day-to-day running of the farm. During school holidays, we hated it because we had to work hard in the fields. Yes. Mm-hmm. But when it's school time, the workers were there to do all the work, but our parents were not expecting us to come home and just sit and read. No, we had to use our hands so that we know that money comes from working hard, and even if we wanted to go further with our studies, that's where the money comes from. Well, we grew things like maize, potatoes, cotton, tobacco, peanuts. So all those, after their season, ready to be plucked out of the ground, yeah? Yeah, we'll do everything, getting them, cutting the maize and taking them off their parent plant or whatever you call it. And then either they are put in bags and they are sold just as that, and there are others where you have to break it all up and it's sold as grain. And yes, we used to have to fill many bags, and then they would go to the grain marketing board. So this is how my parents managed to further our education, because that is where the money came from. And especially with maize, cotton, and tobacco. But though we had really big areas for tobacco, it was mostly the helpers who concentrated on that. Yeah. But it was hard work. I did my nursing training. What I did was, after Cambridge exams, which are equivalent to the Cambridge after O levels here. Yes, I wanted to go to university, but we had to do lower fifth and upper sixth forms. But in the school where I was, many of the girls, when they get the opportunity to pass their Cambridge certificate, they either go for nursing or for teaching. But I wanted to continue to do my A-levels and then to university. But there was always this thing that if you don't join the rest, you are called all sorts of names. Like you are the white girl because you want to go further with your education or whatever. Anyway, in the end, we had to apply for nursing, just like everybody else. And I had applied that. I started nursing within the same year, but as the last group to start nursing, which was in September, because the first one was on the 1st of January, the second one was in April, and the third one was in September. So that's the one I wanted to I just said, well, in case I didn't do very well in my Cambridge, then at least I can continue with nursing or go to nursing as such. But to my amazement, a telegram came on the 23rd of December when we were just ready to celebrate our Christmas at the farm. It was 1964, yes, that I should come and start my nursing training on the 1st of January, 65. And I didn't want that because I wanted to go back to school. Anyway, the family wanted me to go and start nursing. So I did speak. While I was there, I was very intelligent, more intelligent than everybody else, so they say. And I wanted to go back to college to do my Form 5 and Form 6. I spoke to the matron in charge that I wanted to go, but she did not want me to go because she said I was one of the best students at the time, because that was the time when we were doing the first 4 months in training is to decide whether you want to do nursing or not. And I spoke to my parents, and in the end, they agreed, and I had to follow suit that I continue with my nursing training. Then I did my nursing training, finished. And as I was training, I met my future husband. He had already finished. He was 3 years older than I am, so he was already working with the... When I started nursing, he was already working in the railways, yes. But otherwise, I didn't fall in love with him until I was in my third year nursing, yes. Yeah, we just used to go out to the films, to see films or concerts, just as groups, but without anything in it. Yes, we used to have drive-in in Salisbury, and we used to have cinema places as well. Yeah. Yes, so those were the most entertainment, and also concerts. Yes, because we had people like Cliff Richard coming over. From America, the ones I can quote is, what was his name? The one who sang When a Man Loves a Woman.
Percy Sledge.
Eh?
Percy Sledge.
Yeah, Percy Sledge came. Otis Redding, he came. Yeah, I met a lot of these celebrities when they came home. And also I remember meeting such more. You don't know him, do you? Yeah, he was an American, yeah, he was a musician, and he played an instrument. What was it? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was very good. Yes, you have to have the traditional wedding.
And a white wedding?
No, I didn't have a white wedding.
Okay. What was your traditional wedding like?
Well, the traditional wedding is when they bring the monies and everything, and after the lobola, they celebrate. Yes. Lobola was when, in I think most of Africa, for a girl to get married, the husband-to-be and his family pay money to the family of the girl, of the daughter, to say thank you for my future wife. But it can be a very expensive, it can be a very expensive business. And then I had my son. And then because I wanted to do midwifery as well, which was one of the things that my parents had promised my husband, that I should come overseas to do midwifery, because there was no midwifery training back in Zimbabwe at the time. Though there was, but it was only part one, whereas here you have part one and part two midwifery training. So anyway, we applied, and I had 2 places that accepted me straight away, one in Birmingham and one in Nottingham. But because my sister had previously been in Nottingham to do her midwifery, that was 1963, 64, so I followed suit. They accepted me straight away, and my parents said, well, you can go where your sister was. So this is how I managed to come to Nottingham. Those were the only chances. If you want to come overseas, the only other chance was either you come here to do nursing or to go further with other courses to do with nursing. We flew like everybody else. Yes, I know some people used to come by ship, but we flew. I came to England in 1974. Yes, it was the BO, British 725, I think. Or, yeah, it was a British flight. But the only thing which I hated up to today, was we had to buy a return ticket, and then you send it back to the people whom you bought it from, the agents. Yes. So they said they resell it. You don't get anything for it. And yes, because they blamed us, and they said if you don't send it back, they will get a lot of money. They will charge your parents a lot of money to get enough money for the price of the return ticket. The Europeans, well, we used to call them Europeans back home. They were very sophisticated. They had everything. And they had beautiful houses. And you expected the same thing, that when you come to England, oh, it will be really, really nice. I expected really good, lovely buildings like I was back home. But they were not like that. When I got to Heathrow, I just saw these old houses. And yes, I thought, wow, is this England? Yes, that puts people off completely. Yes, glowing, as they say, honey and milk and honey world. It was a different world from where we came from. Yes, I was disappointed in a way. I was disappointed, and I thought, well, it was double standards, because back home they tell us that Britain was so great in everything. Until you get here, you find it wasn't. Yeah, especially in buildings. Our buildings were much newer, I suppose, because these ones, some of them backdate to the 1700s. Yeah. But ours over there were all sort of new, even though they belonged to whites. But those blacks who were able to build their own proper houses, yes, we did have our good houses. Because they always bring the best of everything, except Africa, where they bring out the huts and these stupid places where they think people live. Because even when I got to this country, the girls were asking me, so who's going to be living in your tree? And I was sent back, I said, tree? Then I realized, oh, they think we live in trees. So I said, oh, the branches will grow and grow. By the time I go back, there will be enough to sit for me, to make me comfortable, to lie on. My husband did not come to England. Telegrams or phone calls, it was very expensive, but we still had to do it. Because I think at one time it was about £15 for 3 minutes call. But we were lucky because in our parents, they had a phone at the house. So I was able to speak to them direct. Whereas with other, if I wanted to speak to somebody else, I have either to book the call so that they are at a place where I can reach them. Yes, he wanted to come to England, but we had differences before I left. Yes, yeah. As I said, that he had made a promise to my parents that he would help me to come to England to do my midwifery training, because that's what I wanted to do even before I got married. So when I said to him I wanted to come to England to do midwifery, he didn't want me to do so. So we had differences long before I came to England. So when I applied on my own with the help of my siblings. When I left home, everything was still politically. We were under the UDI independence, unilateral independence by Ian Smith. But things were not that bad. And then came the war when I came to England. So it was very difficult for me to go back to where I used to work, where there was, because it was, a hospital in the, what was it? It was in a village. So I was in charge of a hospital where they were, it was exposed to those people who were fighting at that time. So I was advised not to come back to Rhodesia then. So I had to bring my son over and to bring also some of my brothers and sisters' children so that they were here to be educated here. We were happy because one of my in-laws was one of the prime ministers of that day with Ian Smith. So we were happy and hoping that things were going to settle. Yes, that was prior to 1980. So when Zimbabwe got its independence, we were hoping that things would be just right for everybody. Yes, it was okay for the first 10 years. Yes, we worried about relatives back home. As I say, some of our relatives were directly the families of those who were in power during the unilateral government. Bishop Musorewa, maybe for those who might remember. Yes, he was my sister's brother-in-law. So there was a bit of hate towards their children. So this is why I had to look after their children here in England. We were very happy, and many people went back home from here, those who were here. Some of my friends, best friends, they went home with their families. But I was not going home at the time because, excuse me, I had my sister's children who were at school. But because of the problems politically, I could not leave them here. Yeah, so I had to stay with them. When I came initially, I was here for a year of training and probably another year of gaining experience. But then everything went to pot, yes, because there was fighting back home between the whites and the blacks. Yes, and also there were two factions of political groups on the African side of. And probably it was only once I had grandchildren, that's when I realized, it looks I'm here for a little bit longer than I expected. Yes, yeah. I arrived here in 1974. My first grandchild was 208. So 206. Yes, 206. There was a time I thought I could go home until my son and his wife were expecting. And then they said, would you mind to look after our offspring? So I said yes. They were only about 14, because the rest have left in our group. Yes, we had to learn a lot. And also what I found out was it was difficult to get good grades, though everything, you knew your English, you knew your sentences, you knew everything. But when the tutors read your essays or whatever subject homework, they mark you very low, and the white girls get 94, 96%. And this is what homework which we would be given to do over the weekends. But because there were girls who went out, they didn't do any studies. We would do studies because we haven't got anywhere else to go, but to learn and do whatever we're supposed to do. So on Monday morning, when we go back to school or to the study, then they ask for our notes. So they copy every comma by comma, full stop by full stop. When you hand in your books, they get 96%. You get 45%. Yes. That was very, very unfair. Yeah. Yes. It went on for a long time, and I am a bit of a rebel sometimes. I had to go down to the principal tutor and complained that why is it that I am doing the work and then somebody else just copies everything that I've done and they get good marks. And if I get 50% or 51%, I've done very well according to them. Yes. But these girls have copied from me. So anyway, in the end, the principal called the tutor and asked her why. Then her answer was, well, when she read everything and it was the same. So she said, well, I suppose this one expresses herself better than the other girl. So I said, but it's full stop by full stop. There's nothing that she has changed. So what do you mean? Because she expresses herself in a better way. Yeah. And from that day, it stopped. And the nice thing about it is, at the end, when we did our finals, some of these girls, they failed. And we passed. Hooray! Yes. It was very difficult, even on the wards. They didn't want to call you by your name. They rather give you an easy name that they can call you by, which I hated. Yes, they called me Madi. Yeah. Which I didn't like, and up to this day, many people know me as Madi. In my class, no, we didn't have any Zimbabweans. I was the only Zimbabwean, and there were two more girls, one from Birmingham, who was from the West Indies, and the other one came straight from the West Indies, from Jamaica. Yes, I'm still in contact with one of the girls I trained with. We always talk about the problems we faced during our training and living here in England, yes. She had her prospects at home already. She had just got married and she left her husband back home. So she went home straight. Yeah. Yes. And the other one, she was from Birmingham, but then she went back to Birmingham and got married. And we used to meet because all the, in midwifery, after 5 years, you have a study week. So sometimes we'll meet at the same place as a reunion, which was very good, yeah. No, it was very nice in those days. You choose where you want to go, whether you want to go down to London, Bristol, Leeds, even Scotland. Yeah, you'd go, yeah. Because it was a gathering for all the midwives who were ready to have a week's rejuvenating time in England. Well, I had a brother in Leeds, so I used to go to Leeds. Then my sister and her family also came to Leeds, so I had somewhere to go already. Yes, and then sometimes I had another cousin in Switzerland, so we'll travel to Switzerland. Yes, and the countries around, yes. And on the continent, we used to have our holidays out there, yeah. Where I was at the hospital, there wasn't any Zimbabwe unit because there were no Zimbabweans. So I was the only Rhodesian Zimbabwe there, yes. So I had to make friends with people from various countries. Yes, except the ones who were at the university. They were in a communal place, then they would know each other. Well, no, it wasn't it wasn't difficult, but it's just that you were sometimes treated as a second-class citizen And that was the only problem. But I loved some of the sisters I worked with in midwifery. They were very good. And the others, they were awful. That awful that when we were working in teams, they would give you certain rooms to look after. But I was always assigned to the ones who are either very ill, who have got infection, who needed constant caring. And they gave themselves, that is on a postnatal ward, and they gave themselves people who look after themselves, and they just sit at the desk and they chat, but you haven't got time to chat with them or anything. You are there having to do your work all the time, because some of them were on hourly chats. We have to check all that, temperatures, feeds, the baby, medicines, and cleaning, just general cleaning of the room, because sometimes the night shift, they would not care. They leave blood and everything on the wards because they know that there will be somebody else who's going to clean up the rooms, especially the ones with infected patients in. No, they would not clean them. You speak until your ears and it was difficult because they are the ones who were allocating you to these places. Yes, so you cannot speak to anybody else. Yeah. And when they come for rounds, they say, oh, these rooms are so lovely. Now you can have a cup of tea in here. And yet when we come on duty in the morning, because you have to go around with everybody when they're giving you a report about each patient. And the rooms, some of these rooms are very filthy and smelly. Yeah. But you just know in yourself that, oh, this is where I'm going to be working. It never improved, because there were days when you think, God, do I have to go to work? But then you think, well, I came here to learn, and that's what I'm doing. Through God, I'll succeed. And once I say, well, God will help me, all those troubles, they go, and I'm ready to do whatever I was supposed to do. Yes. They didn't care about us at all. No, we were left to do all the hard jobs. And when I was on the special baby care, I went to do special baby care as well. The special nurses over there, they were very rude, they were racist. And yeah, I used to be given babies, the tiny babies, the premature babies who are dying, having their last breaths. Then they tell you to look after those. Or the ones who have got spina bifida, or who need who needed special caring. You had to adapt. When I finished, my brother and his wife had finished their studies in Newcastle. So I brought them over to Nottingham, so that instead of me paying rent for them in Newcastle, and then I am paying my own rent in the nurse's home, and then I am paying money home, looking to look after my son. So I found myself remaining with nothing, almost nothing at the end of the day. So I suggested they came to Nottingham after I'd looked for a place for us to live, which had more rooms. It was near town. It was within Nottingham here. Yeah, it was a very nice place. Yeah, but it was owned by an Indian chap. The only problem we had was heating, because he would not repair the heating in the place. And we had a young child. Luckily, they came during summer, And it was very warm that year, 1976. It was a very hot year. So luckily, we didn't need a lot of heating. So when my brother and his wife left, and the child, they went to Bahamas. No. They went to Guyana in South America. So I moved out of that place and lived somewhere with where there was one of the girls from Zimbabwe. So we lived in the same house, sharing rooms. Yeah, which was very nice. And that's when later on I had to find a house and then to look after the other members of the family. Well, it was difficult from even at home. I could have brought him with me when I came to England or when I used to visit home. But they knew that if I brought him over, chances are I might decide not to come home to live. So they held on to him until when the, what's name broke? Until the fighting broke, yeah. And it was intense over our area at the farms because they were killing all the farmers. The black farmers were being killed by blacks as well. When my parents in the end said yes, he could come, he had to have a visa. He had to have all the vaccinations that were needed for him to come to England. So only after he had finished those, then, and yellow fever and other things, then they would allow him to board the plane. And also for me to have him here, I had to send my bank account to the Home Office to them to show them that I am able and capable of looking after him here. Yes. And then I bought a ticket, and then he came. She was a very nice mother and son reunion. I remember the day I picked him up from the airport. It was like a dream, and I had to wait to get him because he came as an accompanied, children. They were being looked after. So there were a few other children that came with him, but they were non-speaking English children, so he had to do the interpretation for them. So the hostesses were very eager to see who the parents were, who have such an eloquent English-speaking child. Yes. So, yes, it was very nice. I just having him in my arms, it was gold itself. Yeah. With my career, I started my midwifery training in end of July, 27th July, 1974. And during the training in November, I had an accident at work. Because those days, the doctors, they were the law. What they want you to do, and the other trained members, you had to do it. I had a patient who was in labor, and she needed another injection in the back for pain. She was a bit bigger than I am. I'm only small. So we worked in pairs. I was a student. I had a trained nurse with me. So I said to him, okay, let me call my other nurse to come and help me. Oh, no, I want to go. I will do it now. Come on, do it now. So I said, I cannot. And he could see that the lady was quite huge, and she was lying flat. He wanted her turned to her side. In fact, it was to her left side, so that he can do a top-up. And I got hurt. I had 3 slip discs. Yes. At the top and 2 at the bottom. Yes. Yeah. So that was a setback. For 6 months, I was hospitalized, or I stayed in the nursing home recuperating. You don't know much, you just say, well, they are the bosses, they are looking after me. But one thing they didn't do was they know that when you are injured at work, the ones whom you are working with and the one in charge of the shift, they have to fill in forms for the accident, which they never did. I could hardly walk, I could hardly do anything. But that time it was about 8 o'clock. And then the nursing officer, who is like a matron at that time for the midwifery, came round. She was very nice to me, actually. She had interest in foreigners, I think I could say. And she came to me, she said, how are you? And I just told her that I'm not feeling very well. I've got, I can't do anything. I was cold, my headache and everything. So I told her what had happened. So she said to me, did you tell any of the ones in charge? I said, yes, I told them. What did they do? Nothing. No, but they didn't even say rest or whatever. I continued. Then she was the one who said, okay, you go home now, and then we'll see how you are tomorrow. I couldn't get out of bed, but I had to, so that she could see in the position I was in. And she came over across, and she brought the forms for me to fill in. So she was the only one who helped me to fill in the accident forms. These girls, they knew that I might get money, but they did not want to help me. This was the reason why they were already against blacks. How can a black person get money for the injury? Yeah, they just did not want to help at all. So from thence, I was seen by the occupational health doctor. I went to the nurse's home, and I was on traction for quite some time for my neck and back. Yes, and which I still suffer from today. Yes, my trust in God, because I was brought up a Christian, and I was a Christian right through. Because for me to come here, I took it that it was through God that He wanted me to come over. This is why I said when I was faced with hard jobs to do, I just said to myself, I'm here to serve my God. And after that, I feel better, and everything becomes easier. Yes. Yes, there were so many times that I felt I wanted to go back home, or not just to wake up, because it was hard. Yes, nobody cared for you. The only thing they cared for was for you to do the work, and they are sitting there talking and laughing. Yes, I worked at the same hospital. What happened was, because I was, after the accident, I wanted to continue with my midwifery training. They let me do so. But on the other hand, I didn't have anybody to direct me what to do. Until we did, as students, when we learned about accidents, and what, especially with the industrial accidents and accidents at work, what is to be done, what you're entitled to, what this. So we had a gentleman from the NHS who came to give us a lecture on that. And then my friends stood up for me. And they said, we've got a friend of ours who got injured, but nothing has happened because I was supposed to have been compensated each week for the injury. And this was in April, and nobody had said anything to us. So it was only then when we were having the lecture that they confronted him, and he helped me. He said, okay, during the week when we've got time to come to his office at the train crossings in Baseford. That's where I think it became a job center, and it had all the NHS things in the offices. So we went there, he helped me to fill in the forms, and I was able to get my entitlement per week of so much money towards my injury. Yes. But because, you are so honest being a foreigner, I felt guilty to keep on getting this money when I'd got back to training and working. So I submitted a letter to say I was feeling much better. So probably I don't need this amount of money. Yes, they were happy to stop it. But it was only in later years that I learned that it was supposed to be for right through my lifetime. I felt guilty receiving that money when I was also receiving my own wages at the end of the year, of the month. Because you're so honest and innocent, Yeah. So this is what happened. And I had been advised that if I retired from nursing at that time, I'll be paid more. That is after I spoke to this gentleman. I'll be paid more towards the accident at the hospital than if I left it, because of my age-wise. As the wage goes up, the money becomes less. And then I thought, well, I've got children to look after and nieces and nephews. I kept on going to work and going off sick. And even when I was working, the area health authority were very kind. I was still earning the full pay, and after they'd agreed that I do less hours. But the people I was working with, they were not very happy with that. They would let me work. I was put to work in antenatal clinic, and I had this pink collar on my neck to help me. No, she would sit in the office. She's knitting her children's cardigans, and she said, well, you are being paid for nothing. You do the work. So, and it was difficult to bend down to do, BPs, everything in midwifery, examining a lady and everything else. But I had to do it. What can I do for the 3 days I was there? She was also working part-time because she'd had twins. But that was it had nothing to do with being ill. It was her wish. But she would come out with those nasty words. And she would not do anything when I'm working with her. No. She sits in the office from 1:30 until 5 o'clock. And then she goes off. I'm working with the doctors and everybody else. The other teams, they are working with their sisters in charge. But my sister in charge was busy knitting in the office. Yeah. But you cannot complain to anybody. Yeah. And she was very nasty because when I go to her, she said, what do you want from me? You are being paid money for nothing. You go and do the work. From NHS, I retired in the end, 1991. It was about 14 years after.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
something like that. No, I didn't go to any other hospitals. I was working at the same hospital, yes. The best NHS they had was that time. Because we had everything in the hospitals. Nurses were being looked after, doctors were being looked after, and the carers, which are now carers, they were used to be called auxiliaries. They were looked after. Everybody knew their work and they used to do their work, as they are. And what annoys me today is the same uniform they wear at work is the same uniform they'll go on the buses or drive home or go to shopping in them. So to me, these are the results where we get all the bags, super bag and other things that came in the 90s. It was through then, these girls not wearing their own clothes, because when I was at the hospital, we were not allowed to come out of the premises of the hospital in your own uniform. You'd change, and the dirty uniform you have had for the day, you put it in a laundry bag until the end of the week, and then they go for laundry at the hospital. And you wear your own clothes going out, because had you been seen outside with the uniform on, you have to answer questions why you are out of bounds with the uniform on. And I could say infection, there wasn't much infection at all. No, because if there was infection, you leave it in the hospital. Yeah, you didn't bring it outside. Yes. And then the other thing was there were more trained staff on duty. So we're able to do all the things like temperatures, blood pressure, at least it's the things you've been taught from being training as a nurse. Whereas now, they are taking the carers to do this job, which they are not really taught from beginning as nurses were. I mean, they are doing a great job, but it's unfair on their side. And what are the nurses doing? They're on the computers. They are not working from the bedside with the patients like we did. No. They only listen to what so-and-so had said, who is looking after the patient, who is not a trained nurse. Because the trained nurses now, they look after the computers. Yes, I did, because I was on a postnatal ward, and the nurse in charge there, she did not like me. She would make me work. And though I tell you I'm not supposed to be doing this, even putting clothes, in the laundry room, packing pillows, pillowcases, sheets, and other things to put them in the shelves, because I'm not able to lift my neck upwards. And then once I'm doing that and it's a bit heavy for me, or I've done it for some time, my neck just goes the other way. I cannot control it back. So I have to go off sick. And then sometimes I've got a spell of 3 months before I go back to work. Or sometimes 6 months, because I had no feeling in my hands or whatever. And it was hard. I think in the end what happened was before I retired, they wanted me to work as a receptionist. But I did say, well, would there be any difference? Because I was a trained nurse, trained midwife, and I should have remained on my scale of earnings. Then they said, no, I will have to come down to earn receptionist wages. So I said, no, until you find me a job that's less heavy, that I can do and still earning the same what I've qualified for, don't come to me. So I was that stern and stupid, maybe, in the fact that I should have retired much earlier in the day. And then the reason why I had to retire was because I'd been off sick for quite a long time. So they asked one of the professors from the QMC to examine me. And of course, because I could not, what do you call them again? My leg muscles and my cervical, my skeleton would not carry me to do heavy work. So he said I was not able to continue as a midwife. So this is why they had to retire me on ill grounds. Well, in different areas, really, yeah. Because it's very difficult to compare. Because when I was over there, that was the only life I knew. And when I'm here, I'm surrounded with whatever I have. But my goal was to make sure that my son passes his exams, continue to whatever level he wanted to be in school for. If he goes to university, goes to university. And he works well. And when he gets married well. And whatever comes, produce children and so forth. That was my aim that was my goal. Yes, I wanted to make sure that my son was comfortable in his life. He is my greatest achievement. My son is my greatest achievement. Yes, I've been going on holidays and to see when my parents were still alive, I'd go there and stay with them and see brothers and sisters and all the other family, because, in Africa, it's not just you and your immediate family. We've got an extended family. Yes, so I did all that. I'm Rhodesian British. I was born a British subject, and I did not see why I should change. Yes. Whether the country that I was born in now has got different politics in it, but it cannot buy my birthright. So that's my belief. Yes.